to see you again, and congratulations on this new book, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the first book you've released no longer as a teacher as your main day job. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess it's coming out right. Yeah, the first one to come out
Is
after
that
me quitting
congratulations
teaching.
or is it commiserations? I guess there's a
I
bit
know,
of both, no?
congratulations. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate
Uh-huh.
it.
What was can I ask you what without getting too personal, of course,
Yeah.
what was it about now was you felt was the right time to be a full-time writer, specifically having released so many books and
Yeah.
having you've got a great
Well,
fan base.
yeah, I mean, just part of it is just like financial realities of living in the United States,
Yeah.
and having two children. So
Sure.
I've got 1 year left of 8 years of tuition payments left. So, with just the 1 year left,
No, I, I
it's
share
now
I
a little
share
bit
the I share the
safer, a
feeling. I
little
know
bit
how you
safer
feel.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, to move on.
Yeah. Uh-huh. But at the same time, I mean, 'cause you taught English, you taught mathematics, and there's a lot of in jokes in the book. Obviously, I don't want to spoil them or give them away, but I get
Yeah.
kind of get the feeling that it was something maybe you knew that you were coming to the end of kind of this your term as a maths teacher, and this was something that you really wanted to kind of ingrain in this book.
Oh yeah, I mean, any opportunity to take like a self-deprecating sort of, jab at yourself is always, well, I don't know. For me, it's fun. I don't know if it is for the reader. But no, I mean, I've definitely been thinking about it for the last few years, like when, I'd be calling it sort of quits on the teaching side of things. It's just been, I mean, I obviously really enjoy teaching. It's just been getting really hard to do both jobs to the level that they both require now. Yeah, happy happy that the writing side of things have done well enough that I have the opportunity, to move on.
Brilliant. I mean, it must be great as well to realize that you're going to have a whole lot more time to dedicate to your writing now. Is that something that you kind of felt you needed maybe for your previous books? Obviously, they've all come
I'm
out brilliantly, but
yeah,
was there ever a book that you, because of deadlines more than anything, I
sure.
imagine, was that something that you kind of played heavily on the way that you wrote before? And maybe this is something that'll change now.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, just part of it is, I'm getting older, and so like I only have so much energy for certain things, and I don't know. Like I look back, it's like, man, I don't know how I did it before with a full-time job and two kids and coaching their sports and still managing to write books. I just don't know how it happened before, which was fine. Like part of it getting done was it just always got done. Like
Yeah,
if I thought about it, it would get more stressful.
sure.
Um, yeah. So actually, I don't know. Like weirdly, I'm a little bit afraid that like if I have more time, that makes it easier to procrastinate. And usually when you have no time, that's like, oh, I have this hour. I have to use this hour today to write. And it's a little bit, I think even with students, like as a teacher, to switch over there briefly, when students were struggling, and parents would be like, "Oh, I'm going to take this kid out of this after school activity or do this," and I would always advise against it because it would be like, taking away something they enjoy to do isn't going to help. In fact, I think the kids tend to be better at time management when they have like a bunch of other things going on. Not that we want to overwork them either, but
Yeah.
anyway.
So talking about kind of your students and the kids, that generation, this feels very much like a warning, a wake up call, very much so. Kind of like you've got all this power, the kids have got what we have as well, but they this is what they've been born into. I mean, my kids, the other day, my daughter, she's 14, and when she can't think what she wants to do for the weekend, ChatGPT is her first port of call, which is just I I hate these kind of things. But it's also
Oh
so
man.
difficult to
Yeah.
get them to think for themselves. And this book really kind of dives into how we've lost our own personality, our own humanity, because this thing can think for us, or apparently think for us, even though it hasn't got the human experience that you mentioned.
Yeah. And
So I
it
guess
doesn't do a very
it's very much felt like it was a wake up call for you to not just to your pupils, but to kind of people of that generation more so than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's pointed necessarily at that generation. I'm sure it's there. But 100% like this book, I would happily describe as an anti-AI screed, and hopefully also a celebration of human creativity and human connectiveness. And it's so bizarre that we even have to like
Really
specify
discuss this. Yeah.
creativity as human
Yeah.
creativity and the connection. Um, I started the book not too soon after I was a part or became a part of a class action lawsuit suing ChatGPT on behalf of writers. So yeah, clearly, I won't say clearly, but definitely all those a lot of those anxieties of dealing with that case, found its way metaphorically
Uh-huh.
into the book.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to speak too much about that case that you mentioned, but I imagine that was very much kind of to stop AI from being able to kind of plagiarize and use human human experience, no,
Right.
and books that have been written,
Yeah,
and
that's the
make them
crux of it.
basically like public domain, no. So I'm quite curious how much that informed the way that you wrote this book, because I don't want to give too much away, obviously,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's alternating chapters which get pretty mind-boggling in the in the best possible sense.
Mm,
But it took me a few chapters for the penny to kind of drop
sure.
exactly what you were getting at. So I'm quite curious how that kind of informed the way that you wrote that particular perspective, which you call you in the book.
Yeah, so I mean, some of it was a little bit of just like the logic game that I play with, like the what ifs that become either stories or novels. Like, and the original what if I had for the book is like, oh, what if a dead body was being transported by like someone actually remote controlling it? Which seemed like a really silly what if that I put away for a while. But when I joined the lawsuit, it quickly became apparent to me that
Sure.
that what if wasn't so silly. That no, a tech company, if they could make gobs of money, would totally do this without any thought to ethics or really a whole lot of forethought other than like how much money can we make. So once that part of it was there, I did want to focus on two different parts in the narrative. One is Julia's narrative, like the person who's controlling the brain dead man, and I also wanted to focus on the horrific experience of that the man we're calling Bernie for now.
Yeah.
um, and yes, his chapters get very sort of strange and phantasmagoric because I really wanted to try to replicate for the reader the strangeness of having like your consciousness if not colonized, at least hacked. Um, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully that works for everybody.
Yeah, it did. I mean, like I said, it took me a few chapters to kind of really understand where you
Yeah,
were coming from, but it
yeah.
works really well once the penny drops about a third of the way through or so. There was a few phrases that kind of really, it's like, right, I know where this is going now. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that. I don't want to obviously I say again. I don't want to spoil it. It's about a girl who's kind of a semi-professional gamer that they
Mhm.
hire to kind of to remote control this comatose guy. I'm quite curious. Was it always your intention for Bernie to be in that state? Because I felt that maybe it works perfectly, but I also felt that maybe if it was with someone was more conscious of themselves and what was going on, was more self-aware, that would have kind of allowed you to play more into the submissiveness that even ourselves have
Yeah.
fallen into.
Well, that's a really good question. No one's actually asked that or put that in that way to me. For me, I really wanted, I wanted to try to make it somewhat medically plausible. And I figured he wouldn't agree. He had signed his, according to what's happening in the story, signed like his body to science, or except he signed it directly to this tech company. So yeah, I mean, I would think at least now most people, if they were awake and able to say, no, you can't put that stuff you can't put that shit in my brain. So no, like
But
the whole time it was
but people
always,
are so willing though to accept, unfortunately,
no, that's
not
true.
consciously, but like I said,
Yeah.
my daughter looked up ChatGPT and she was so willing to take whatever opinions AI threw at her to do on a Saturday
Yeah.
afternoon, you
No, and
know?
actually in some of the research I did, I came across, people who really uh, fall in love with the idea of the transhuman of being able to not not talking about gender and
Oh no,
LGBTQ
yeah,
plus,
sure.
but like changing their humanity by augmenting their biology, etc. So no, I think what you brought up that's probably actually more um, uh, a more realistic thing that may end up happening is people putting stuff into their brain either to augment or try in their minds make them into like a superhuman. Um, yeah, but I wanted to seem like this guy Bernie had, he has no idea what has happened to him when we're introduced to him. And his experience is this weird refraction of what's actually happening to his body, which is, I don't outright tell you that for the first couple of chapters, but hopefully,
Yeah.
as you said, yeah, that's probably about the point. People realize, oh, wait a minute, these chapters, it's not a big spoiler. These Bernie chapters are are his experience of what comes next in the Julia chapters.
Mm.
Um, yeah, anyway, I mean, one of my fears was I wanted to finish this book and have it published before it could actually be a real thing, which I think I made the finish line barely.
Just in the nick of time,
Yeah.
yeah. Brilliant. And that's all we've got. On one side, we've got Bernie, who you says, I'm quite curious why you decided to call him you and tell him in the first perspective. I can imagine why, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering why you specifically decided to choose that.
You know, when I first started the book, I didn't write an outline. This was a book that I kind of went to, made up as I went. Obviously I had some vague plans as to what was going to happen. And I think I started those chapters in the third person, but it just wasn't working for me. Um, or it wasn't working the way I wanted it to. So, because I really wanted to put the reader as much as I possibly could into that weird headspace.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought doing it as a you section, which is, completely jarring when you're reading, as we all know, there are a lot of people who don't like reading second person, and,
Yeah.
and second person is difficult if it's not done well. Hopefully I did do it well. But for me, the main choice was I really wanted to have almost like zero filter between the reader and Bernie's hijacked consciousness.
No, no, I think it works really well because I almost it gave me kind of a sense of imagining what how almost like how AI would try to grasp itself, the human experience, and how difficult
Right.
it is to kind of to grasp it when you've got all these weird memories that you don't really know where they're coming from and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
So the first perspective really worked in the book's favor that way. Yeah.
Well, I
Uh-huh.
appreciate that. Thanks.
And then also on the other side we get this the game of Julia Flang. I'm curious why you specifically chose that kind of character. I'm guessing it was kind of to kind of show or explain how it's kind of like the blind leading the blind almost in terms of
Yeah,
AI.
well, yeah. Well, some of it's like I wanted it to be a younger person and like again explain like how or why someone could possibly agree on short notice,
Yeah.
to do this job and have someone be sort of an outsider from the company. Um, so that was sort of a little bit of the way I found my way to Julia. I knew I wanted to start on the West Coast. My son went to college at Occidental College, which is out on
Okay.
the West Coast, and so Julia is modeled after, maybe one or two of his friends, if not my own kids too. So for major characters, I usually start off with people that I know as at least just like a leaping off point, and then they very
Yeah.
quickly become, somebody different. Um, and eventually, with me trying to find a way that would hopefully seem realistic that she would take this job, it was a good way into her character, into her family dynamics. Why would she take this job? And all, uh, she has this like semi-estranged relationship with her mother who helps run this big giant company. And I don't know, I thought that was all fun and hopefully interesting ways to have a little friction in many different ways as possible with Julia, with what's happening.
hmm and also going back to the U section, it feels very much like a sense of kind of depersonalization, like an out of body experience. And in the sections there, they also there's kind of this talk about not being able to remember so many human things that AI could never remember as memories, like what you eat for breakfast, if you slept, got up early in the weekends or whatever.
Mm.
Um, did you specifically want it to feel like the reader was depersonalized, even though it was in the first perspective, if you get what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think that's, even though like this book is sort of, I don't know, it depends on who you're talking to. Like in terms of like the marketing, the publishing, it's like, oh, it's science fiction, a little bit of humor, some horror. I think this book is one of my most existentially horrific books. Like the idea
Yeah.
of, having your Eunice, uh, no, the hijack maybe colonized, and like, can you even trust what's going on in your head? And that's just such a terrifying thing for as much as our own brains, don't necessarily put us in happy places. It's still us. Like it's still, it's how, I mean, how else do you know yourself? And to have that, you know, have that affected by something that's like externally put into your brain, like a literal, piece of machinery that affects like how you're thinking or how you're unable to think is just utterly terrifying to me. So, I really wanted to lean into that.
Yeah, I mean, so talking of things that get put into your mind. I mean, obviously not physically yet, but it's probably right around the corner. But I find myself when I'm writing articles and whatnot, I find myself trying to write exactly as AI would not write. It's kind of changed my writing style. Would you say
Yeah.
that AI changed your, it just feels like this book was specifically written in certain ways. I mean, you mentioned about intentional errors and nonsense and gibberish to kind of
Yeah,
flummox AI. Was that also
right.
kind of an intentional something you did intentionally, or is that something that you started to do as across the board
Yeah. Well, I
because
mean,
you kind of fed up with AI being able
right.
to kind of reap benefits from everybody's writing?
Sure. I mean, that book, yes, definitely like, one of the characters, and again, not a big spoiler, proposes the idea of soft sabotage, of being able to sabotage a large language model by having pages of gibberish. And then eventually there's a reason why there's pages of gibberish in the book. Um, no, for sure. Like, I mean, I couldn't feel more strongly uh, about, you know, about all our works being stolen and then crapped back out by these large language models. In terms of, I mean, I think every writer has a little bit of ego too, is like, oh, an AI wouldn't be able to replicate what I'm doing. I think everybody hopes and wants that. Um, and at least as these things are currently constructed, I think that's largely true. But at the same time, I was, excuse me, very happy to have a reason to have some real like interesting, hopefully interesting typographical pyrotechnics, shall we say, in
Yeah.
the book. I'm like, oh yeah, AI is not going to do that. That's not the reason why it's there, but I was glad it was there.
Yeah.
I think like more, day to day, it's like when I do podcasts and stuff, and like one of the questions is usually, hey, what you working on now? It's like, I can't tell you now because
Sure.
someone could listen to this podcast, take what I said and
Type
throw it
in
into
AI.
their
Yeah.
their slot machine and come out with a really shitty version of what you were going to
Yeah.
write, but it was
Yeah.
first, I
I
guess.
just
I don't
I
know.
just recently saw Daniel Kraus. He found an angel down published book which was completely made by AI, an actual
Yeah.
paperback book that you could buy on Amazon, which is just
Oh
crazy.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
No.
crazy. Well, talking on the point, I don't know if you've read this book. It's Femme Fatale. I say Fatale, Femme Fatale. This was
I have not.
it's by Sam Beck-Business. I highly recommend it. This one, she did use AI, but for two paragraphs, specifically to kind of to show how bad AI is at
Mhm.
writing. And it got a lot of backlash, and people refused to read it just because she'd used AI
Yeah.
to kind of use AI against itself, if you will. I'm quite
Sure.
curious what you think about that.
Well, I mean, I guess I appreciate the sentiment, but like she also could have just done the work and mimicked the AI itself.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
She was very transparent about it from before the book
yeah.
release. I'll say
So,
that.
right. Like everything, like, in online discussion world, we've lost any context or degree or shades of nuance. So, I mean, I clearly think like what she did to me is much lower on the scale of what other, people are
Oh,
doing with AI. But I mean, the hard truth of it is there's no ethical way in which you can use these models because they steal the writer's work and they don't pay us. So even if you're using it to show that it's bad, you're still engaging with this thing that thieved our works. And I don't know. It's just really I'm constantly flummoxed. And this happened in education too, where there's some teachers who were like pro using it, and I just didn't understand. Like, well, so you can't get on board with that with that ethics part of it. Like, how about I tried saying every time you stick a prompt in there, imagine you live next to a data center and see how would you feel about that? Um, and then they stopped talking to me.
but I mean, I mean, you also, I mean, you mentioned that we mentioned that about kind of the nonsense and the gibberish, those kind of things. Um, Text slop is what you actually called it. Now, text slop could actually be a poison pill. Is that something that you think could actually work? Is that something that you think people should maybe use, maybe deploy, and it could help? Or do you
Yeah,
think we need to
it's
kind of
yeah,
navigate AI to another in a different
right.
way?
I mean, it was a little bit of a theory on my part based on the fact that there are people like sort of online activists who have created uh, like these webs where if an AI bot were to come to it, would get caught like in a permanent loop and not be able to get
Right.
out. Um, and I think some of that is happening. I think I just read recently where a bunch of people, a bunch of AI or online activists in China are trying to like ensnare and make it difficult for those bots to train each other. Um, Yeah, I mean, I don't know how well it would work. I mean, I do know based on how they work, um, that the irony is that it'll always, as currently constructed, these algorithms will always need human produced work to get better, because if it starts just eating itself, it's going to degrade and degrade and get worse and worse.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But I mean,
fun
but
times.
yeah, no, very fun. Yeah, but I mean, it's really impossible to specifically go out of your way to not use it because even if you use like a thesaurus or whatever, automatically AI kind of jumps on top of or whatever you search for on the
Yeah,
internet, whatever. It's really
so I
difficult
mean,
to.
right. Well, that's one of the other insidious parts of it is like they do this when I say the corporations are doing this purposefully is just to use this AI as this broad thing where what I'm speaking of is yes, I know been inserted into Google and to other search engines. What I'm talking about is physically going through the process of opening this LLM program and typing in a prompt. That's the step that's too far.
Right.
But if you want, like any Google search, if you insist on using Google, you can type dash AI and it'll at least eliminate that shitty AI
Right.
summary at the top. Um,
Yeah.
but again, it's sort of madness that we have to figure out ways to shut it off and to not use it.
Uh-huh. No, really. Yeah. Uh-huh. So I mean, I said to you before that the first few chapters of you of Bernie were kind of misleading. I wasn't sure where they were
Mm.
going, where they were getting to. But the penny dropped when I read this sentence. I don't think it's a spoiler. The implanted AI, after sufficient training and learning, will aid the patient in guiding and fostering their own movements without use of the control. It'll be as seamless as you thinking about wiggling your toes and then your toes wiggling, but even better. Um, so I'm quite curious. What were you trying to? How did you know when you wanted the penny to drop in
Yeah,
the story
well,
without giving too much away because it's quite difficult
sure.
for the for those specific alternating paragraphs for you to
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of reveal things
Like,
seamlessly because it is
yeah.
such a kind of a fever dream.
Yeah, I don't know if I honestly ever envisioned like a point where everybody will figure out what's going on in the
Right.
new chapters. I figured hopefully people would some might catch on early, some might catch on right away, some might catch on later. Um, and yeah, maybe after like the first two, like maybe like in the third or fourth, there's a phrase that he overhears that appears in the next chapter. So, again, not a huge spoiler, but like at some point, whoever's reading this, the idea is hopefully you catch on that, oh, Bernie's experiencing what Julia's experiencing. You're just getting the Bernie version first, and then Julia's. But I sort of laughed at the, the AI is going to help you wiggle your toes, but even better to me, that was just a reflection of sort of the, you know, corporate speak talking about the current programs, how they make
Yeah.
everything better.
Uh-huh. And also we talked about Bernie, but we're not really. I mean, for yours and my generation, Bernie is a cult classic. But
Yes.
how did you kind of decide on that, especially because a lot, I mean, it's not specifically aimed, like you said, it's not specifically aimed at a younger generation, but
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a lot of younger people will start watching that movie again now once they've read this book. But what was your
Yeah.
kind of the decision to call it a more fucked up version of Weekend at Bernie's?
Well, it's funny, like when I first started digging into the book, and Julia, it says early on part of her character is that when she's really stressed out, she loves her comfort movie is watching
That's right.
The Big
Yeah.
Lebowski. Um, and part of that is like I first pitched the book to my publishers, like, hey, this book is going to be kind of like a wild horror, Philip K. Dick, Coen Brothers mashup. Like, I knew I wanted Julia's certainly the first half or most of her early chapters to be satirical and hopefully humorous. Um, so when I started writing about how her relationship with her uncle is super close and they've really connected, through movies and a little bit of music as their way of communication and the way that they've really connected. So yeah, Julia became this character that even though she's only 24, she's got this fairly deep knowledge of the movies of the
Yeah.
80s and 90s. And granted, some of this is anecdotal, on my anecdotal experience on my part, but my own children, um, I guess maybe because they live in my hope, have been forced,
That sounds just like my
humorously
household as well.
forced,
Yeah.
to watch like older movies, but they also have an interest in it. But in my experience also in the classroom and seeing my friends' friends, I don't think that's a very I don't think that's a uh,
It's not
I
too
don't think
deep of
that I
a
don't think
cut,
it's a
no.
ter yeah, what am I trying to say? It's not too unique. I mean, even to the point where it was a couple of years ago, Spotify put out like here's the the most streamed decades, and they did it by age group. And within the Gen Zers, like the 90s was either the number one or number two streamed decade.
Yeah,
So it's just that idea that like, these young kids who have relatively easy access to all this media. Like, what do they do with it? How do they discover it? How
yeah,
does it sort of inform who they are? I mean, that's kind of what art does. So, yeah, like all that sort of, and I thought it fit in nicely with the book because here's Julia who loves all this art, whether or not it's old or new. And then you get to compare that later to the AI who's clearly, just mimicking mimicking some of the same stuff that Julia attempts, but Julia's when she expresses a quote of a movie or just even when she's interacting with other people, it's clearly a lot more warmer. It comes from a much more, human and empathetic place compared to
uh-huh,
the monster AI who just,
yeah,
basically consumes all of Bernie's, experience and just craps it back out.
uh-huh. That was my next question. Actually, I was going to ask you about because you said you mentioned The Big Lebowski, and she'd seen it 77 times, and she sees movies as unrealistic facsimiles of life. So I'm
Hmm.
quite curious, was that specific? Was that a film that is a specific kind of movie that creates kind of an unrealistic facsimile of life for you, or is there any, are there any other movies that you kind of considered, or that you do consider yourself as kind of facsimiles for life that kind of
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a common response to all fans, and I include myself, right? Like you hear all the time people say, "Oh, I want to live in the world of that movie or that
yeah.
book." You don't really mean it, but that's how much you enjoy it.
Mhm.
So I think that is just sort of like that part of it. Like that movie just brings, without reasons to spoil, brings so
Yeah.
much comfort to Julia. She's really sort of adopted it as part of her personality. Um, that movie in particular, because it is very funny, it's very quotable. Like I said, I wanted a little bit of a Coen Brothers vibe. Um, but also like, that book, that movie itself is in itself a refraction of The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. It's like it's the Coen brothers doing like sort of a quirky comedy version of that book. So again, like part of the book to me is a celebration of human creation and art and life, at the same time, while it's in battle with this AI incursion.
Hmm. At the same time, the this film, The Big Lebowski, helped her get through her worst year when her father died of a heart attack. It's not That's
Right.
not a spoiler because it's just not really related to the
Yeah.
story. Um, but I'm quite curious when you're writing your books, is that kind of thing that because books more probably more so than movies accompany people through bad things. I certainly go back to certain books
Yeah.
that'll remind me of people or that'll help me through certain things. When you're writing books, especially something like this, is very, very about something very of the times. No, uh, is that something that you take into consideration whilst you're writing?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just like, hey, in this case, a pretty big character detail, it just occurs to me in the moment. And like, I'm going to stick with it and, see what happens. But I think I even had the thought that she might be quoting the dude, which I thought was also just sort of like a funny, yeah, I should say visual, but like a funny thing to have a 24-year-old, woman quoting the dude, in this like tech infused world. I just thought that was sort of a humorous thing. So I really wanted to explore that as much as I could. But yeah, of course. I mean, as a writer, everything I do starts from a place of being a fan or of being an admirer of things that I like. So clearly, I'm, riffing on Philip K. Dick with the title of the book.
Sure.
You know, uh, when I first fell in love with reading, I read a bunch of Philip K. Dick novels, and those were, partly formative experiences, even though I don't do a lot of science fiction writing. So yeah, all my stories tend to start with a love of something that someone else has already written, which is again so different than what an AI does. And that's what the companies will try to argue, and they will in court as well. They try to argue that, oh no, like you had these influences. The AI is doing the same thing. But it's not. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, I have my influences, but then it gets filtered through my unique experience. And
And
AIs
also
cannot and do not experience.
all the references and the homages that you pay, you do lip service to them on you specify exactly where they've come
Yeah,
from and they I mean films, movies and books are
yeah,
all part of the human experience that you talk about in the book.
yeah. And I've also paid for the Blu-rays and the books.
As well, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't steal it and try to pass it off as my own. Yeah.
Brilliant. Um, it's also I want to talk a little bit about the artwork on the book because that's it has a lot
Mm.
to do with the story, especially the bunny rabbit. Um, I can imagine. I'm even considering myself actually. I can imagine a lot of people getting the three-eared rabbit, bunny rabbit tattooed on their arm because of the well, it means a lot
Mm.
from the book. Um, but rather than talking about the rabbit, I'm curious if you had to tattoo or if you could tattoo a specific quote from this book because of its meaning
Ugh.
related to the rabbit and to kind of the message, what would you tattoo on
Oh
yourself?
man, I would need preparation for that. I'd have to go and look. I'm not sure, but the
Yeah.
three-headed rabbit would be really cool. Although I already have two
Yeah,
rabbits
because
on
it's
me,
a very
rabbit
simple, it's a very
tattoos.
simple but very cool tattoo. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So again, the rabbit tattoo, since I didn't outline this in the moment, it was just like my brain was like, oh, there's a rabbit tattoo on his arm and it changes, but it stays the rabbit throughout the book and it becomes a big deal. And that was me figuring out, eventually I had to figure out why it was a big deal. Um, I don't have any tattoo quotes on my body, so like I think it
No,
would be really hard to come up with like a quote. I'm more like I do have three book tattoos. They're all images.
right. But
Like I
no
have a Kurt
specific
Vonnegut
quotes.
thing and Roberto Bolaño and a Mariana Enriquez.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but
Do
there's
you
no
have one?
specific.
Do you have a suggestion?
No, I
I
have
like the
what
wiggling toes
I mean.
one.
The main thing that I was. I mean, it was. It's a silly one, but it kind of is. I love this the one about the slop, the toxic, the
Mm.
slop being the poison pill. Is it was just kind of like a reminder that there is a possible way out of this. There's a silver lining.
Yeah, maybe we can have the rabbit go into Alice in Wonderland and instead of bringing you down the rabbit hole. You're offering the pill that gets rid of AI slop. I don't know. There was some comparison there, but I lost it.
Brilliant. Uh-huh. But and then the actual artwork itself on the books, they're quite different. The US and the
Yeah,
UK, always nearly always the case. Apart from one or two books this year, I think they've pretty much all been quite different. How involved are you in the artwork, and how does the decision get made? What comes out in the UK and then the US?
yeah. Well, happily, well, not happily. I am not a visual artist. I
Right.
wish I was. My US publisher typically will say, "Hey, do you have any ideas?" And I'm like, not really. Although in this case, I did send them a whole bunch of 70s science fiction paperbacks. And
All
actually,
right.
the cover to Eric LaRocca's US version of Wretch. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
I
with the
just,
can with the
I
can
wanted like, yeah, I
with the
wanted like
candle on it. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted a retro sort of look to it, which the US did. And when they sent me, it really just had like the eye on it, and like maybe I have a little bit of pre-publishing PTSD from books with eyes on it because my first two books that were published, or the first book that I ever had published, The Little Sleep, had eyeballs all over it, and it didn't do as well as we wanted. So I'm a little bit superstitious. But it's like, what, my editor, she had the same reactions. Like, we need the rabbit, a reference to the rabbit, or something unique, not just the eyeball. So, um, and uh, and Archer, Bloomsbury Archer, right off the bat, like this was the first image they sent me. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I thought it was very playful and visually, in a minimalist way, gives you a little bit of clue as to what's going to
Yeah.
happen. In addition to the title itself, which I think kind of
Uh-huh.
describes,
Yeah.
the main
No, I mean the reason I
conflict in
ask
the
is
book.
I love both of them. That the British one when the UK one when it first kind of released the image, there was quite a bit of backlash that they a lot of people said they much preferred the US one. But now that I've read the
Hmm.
book,
Yeah,
I think I prefer the UK version because it kind of I love them
yeah,
both there, but I think it just makes more sense the UK version, especially the is it Broken Binding and the release one with the various
yeah.
bunnies around the spray there.
Right.
It
Yeah.
just kind of it makes more sense. It kind of goes with the book a lot more so than the US
Yeah.
version after having read it.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, very different. I love both. It's funny. People seem to have a strong reaction one way or the other. I have heard
Yeah,
from a whole bunch of people who like the UK and they're like, oh, UK, our covers are always better. I'm like, yeah, I guess,
depends.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. That's why I write
Uh-huh.
books and not make art or visual art.
Uh-huh. At the same time, just recently, this was something I had no idea about as well. Talking of UK and US publishers, I can't remember who it was I was speaking to, but it was just recently that they said that the UK and the US publishers also, the editors, sorry, they also kind of they don't speak together, but there's kind of they can reach a kind of consensus with the story as well. Is that the same case with you?
That hasn't been with me usually. I'm not usually with every book, and this is my first with Bloomsbury Archer.
Right.
Um, and so, they purchased the book well after it had already been accepted by Morrow, and I'd already done edits. So, like, all my edits have been done through the U.S. publisher, not
All
the
right.
U.K. publisher at this point.
Uh-huh. Yeah, brilliant. Just to finish off then, um, you must be really, really excited as well. The fact that A Head Full of Ghosts is coming out with eight fantastic directors. I've interviewed them a few times
Yes.
because they're brilliant directors. Of Goodnight Mummy and The Devil's Bath were fantastic movies.
Devil's Bath is
Also, this
genius. Yes.
and you've got some great stars in there as well. How involved are you in that project? How far off the ground is it? How much can you tell us about the
Yeah.
movie?
So like I have no official involvement. However, Friends of Fiala have been amazing. Veronica and Severin, so nice and so thoughtful and so dark and weird. I think this movie's going to be really messed up and
Yeah, I
scary
mean
and
their films are
disturbing.
so dark.
And I'm
Yeah.
so excited. Yeah, and they've been great. Like from when they were first came on, just the Zoom calls, asking me questions, wanting my input, showing me early versions of their screenplay. Again, I had no contractual say, but I was very happy that they included me in that sort of way. So now my wife Lisa and I went to Dublin in early March because they were filming in the south of Dublin or south of
Right.
Dublin in a few places, and so yeah, we spent like 4 days on the set and. I won't say how, but they put us to work a little bit
Uh-huh.
unexpectedly, which was fun. And it's just been so this year's been sort of like it was a magical experience. And I say that uh, meaningfully, like I truly mean that. In a weird way, the producers have had a Head Full of Ghosts since 2015. So like, it's been over a decade. There's been many conversations and I've gotten to know these people and consider them friends. And they were just so warm and welcoming and based on what I've seen, like I said, I think it's going to be just an amazing movie.
And
Very
I
fortunate.
must ask you, of course,
Oh,
the
so they
great.
finished, I should say they finished filming. I can say that.
They wrapped it
Yeah,
already.
so they're
Okay.
yeah, so they're editing. Maybe I don't know when. Hopefully a year from now, we'll see.
Right. And I've got to ask you, of course, these characters that you wrote,
Yeah.
that casting, was that, once they were cast, were that pretty much how you imagined them?
Um, I mean, so when I imagine characters, they can be a little bit more like blurry, and like I said, sometimes I start with people that I know. And so
Yeah.
like my immediate family are sort of convinced that the parents are my parents. They're not, even though I took some of their work experience and stuff like that. So no,
Right.
like they aren't who I imagined, but that's not to say um that they're gonna be amazing, in their roles and
Oh,
do a great
sure.
job. I'm really interested in seeing how the two young actors, the two children perform. And what I heard from the set, both from Veronica, and I don't think this is, me telling tales out of school, both the directors and the producers by the end were just raving about, the two young actors who played Margie and Mary and just said they were wonderful, one of the best parts of the experience. And, even though, obviously they had a great time with the adult actors too. So,
Uh,
no, very hopeful. I think it's going to be a good movie and have some surprises for people who have read the book, but also still, be pretty truthful to the book as well.
uh. And what did you have anything to do with the surprises, or were they surprises for you too?
Oh, no, like in the story, some of those surprises, just be a little bit, and well, it's not like page for page
Oh,
the
sure, yeah,
book, but
but what I mean is that the screenplay, those surprises that came up in the screenplay, were they things that you had to do with, or was that something that you gave them a free rein to? One of
oh
that,
no, I
with
mean,
them.
like I said, I have no contractual say.
Yeah.
My anecdotal Hollywood experience, everything has changed for various reasons. So yeah, but the scenes that are the most important to me in the book, even some little ones, all made it into the movie. So I'm very pleased.
It couldn't come out at a better time either because not just horror, but especially horror adaptations like from Daniel Krauss books. Claire
Yeah.
McLeod Chapman's got another one coming out soon as well. It's just horror is a go at the moment.
Yeah, hopefully the bubble doesn't burst like the AI bubble will.
Yeah, fingers crossed for both of those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for your time, Paul. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck with the release next week,
Well, thank you,
and
Howard.
I hope to speak to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you so much.
All right, all the very best. Nice to see you again. All
Good to
right,
see
take
you.
care of yourself. All right, bye now.
Okay, bye.
Cheers.